When I bought my property just outside the neighborhood, I specifically made sure it wasn't part of the HOA. I enjoy peace, privacy, and private property rights. Unfortunately, my new neighbors had other plans, especially their HOA president. Before purchasing property, I reviewed every county document myself. My land was completely outside HOA jurisdiction. There wasn't a single HOA covenant attached to my deed. Everything was crystal clear. 3 days after moving in, Karen welcomed me to the neighborhood. Then she informed me that HOA membership fees would be due at the end of the month. I politely smiled and replied, "I'm not in your HOA." Her expression changed immediately. Karen insisted that every home in the area must join the HOA. I showed her my certified property records. Unfortunately, she wasn't interested in facts. She preferred making demands. Over the next several weeks, I received HOA violation notices almost daily. They cited landscaping issues, parking violations, and unpaid HOA dues that I never owed. Eventually, Karen called the police and claimed I was refusing lawful HOA orders. The responding officers quickly discovered something important. HOA rules are not criminal laws, and membership isn't mandatory when you're not part of the HOA. While Karen was busy threatening fines, I had recently finalized another real estate purchase, a small commercial parcel located directly beside the HOA amenities. It seemed insignificant at the time, until we looked at the property records. The county survey revealed something fascinating. The HOA clubhouse parking lot and several utility easements crossed my newly acquired parcel. Legally, everything had been properly recorded decades ago. My attorney confirmed that I had legally acquired all rights attached to the parcel. The HOA retained access rights under recorded agreements, but I was now their landlord for that specific property. Karen had absolutely no idea. Karen thought she was forcing me into her HOA. Instead, she had unknowingly started a conversation about the land beneath her own clubhouse, and the truth was about to surprise everyone. The responding officers quickly confirmed that I wasn't a member of the HOA. My property had never been included in the community's governing documents. Karen had called the police over rules that simply didn't apply to me. The case was closed within minutes. The HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting after learning about my commercial property purchase. At first, they assumed it had nothing to do with their community. That assumption wouldn't last very long. The county maps told a very different story. Professional surveyors began verifying properties' legal boundaries. They carefully measured every easement and access point connected to the HOA amenities. Everything matched the county's records perfectly. No one could argue with certified surveys. My attorney explained that ownership and access rights are two different things. The HOA retained its legal easements and continued access. However, the underlying commercial parcel now belonged to me. The room became very quiet. Residents were stunned by the revelation. Most homeowners had no idea how the community amenities were legally structured. Many assumed the HOA owned everything outright. They couldn't have been more mistaken. Ironically, I had no plans to interfere with the HOA's operations. I purchased the parcel as a long-term investment. I simply expected the same respect for property rights that I gave everyone else. That seemed fair to me. Karen finally realized that threatening non-members isn't a successful HOA strategy. The police investigation had embarrassed the entire board. Residents began asking difficult questions, and accountability was finally arriving. County officials publicly confirmed the property's ownership history. The documents were properly recorded decades earlier. Nothing about the transaction was unusual or hidden. Everything had been completed legally and transparently. Several HOA board members apologized for the unnecessary conflict. They admitted they had relied entirely on Karen's interpretation of HOA authority. Residents appreciated their honesty. The neighborhood was finally moving forward. The incident inspired the HOA to host educational meetings about homeowner rights and property law. Residents learned valuable lessons about HOA limitations. Knowledge helped prevent future misunderstandings. Everyone benefited from the experience. My legal team worked cooperatively with the HOA's attorneys. Together, we clarified access rights and future responsibilities. No lawsuits were necessary. Sometimes communication solves problems better than conflict. The HOA approved several new governance policies. Future enforcement actions would now require legal review before being issued. Homeowners welcomed the additional protections. Trust slowly returned to the community. Eventually, the board and I reached a respectful understanding. I wasn't their HOA member, and they weren't my landlord. Mutual respect made everything much easier. Life in the community quickly returned to normal. Families continued enjoying the neighborhood amenities. The property dispute became an important lesson rather than an ongoing problem. Peace had finally returned. Karen eventually resigned from her leadership position. Her aggressive enforcement tactics had damaged community trust. Residents wanted leaders who understood both responsibility and respect. Positive change had arrived. New HOA leadership focused on cooperation rather than confrontation. Their goal was simple: protect property values while respecting homeowner rights. The community strongly supported the new direction. My commercial property remains exactly what was always intended to be: a long-term investment, nothing more. Sometimes owning property is simply about being a good steward of it. Months later, neighbors often joked about the day the HOA accidentally called the police on their own landlord. It became one of the community's most unforgettable stories. And thankfully, everyone could laugh about it. This situation was never about power or revenge. It was about understanding that property rights apply equally to everyone, whether you're an HOA president or a private landowner. The law treats ownership seriously. Karen called the police because I refused to join her HOA. What she didn't know was that I had legally purchased a land connected to her community amenities. Because before demanding authority over someone else's property, it's always wise to check who actually owns it.